Well, what's up, good people? Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. It is Manic Monday, and I'm headed back down the road. It's been kind of a crazy day. I drove about 350 miles yesterday going up and working on a house that was built in 1867. That's a newbie in comparison to the red brick house, but it's going to be interesting and a lot of fun doing some work there on that place. It's incredible, right literally on the river, although there was police in front yesterday when I was leaving, and come to find out, guy drowned. He was out kayaking, and it's I forgot what the name of the river is, but it's a big river, and fell out of the kayak and he drowned. So, I always tell you, be careful, and tomorrow is not promised. So live your life that way, and make sure you tell the people you love how much you love them. So we're sitting here, and it is the 19th already of February. February is literally almost gone. There's only 10 more days left to this month, and things are already beginning to happen. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock for the next 2 weeks, it is franchise tagging time, and as well as transitional tag. Last year, we ended up tagging, of course, Tony Pollard. The year before, we ended up tagging Dalton Schultz, and before that, we had tagged Dak Prescott, as well as D. Law, and things like that. Dalton Schultz was interesting because, of course, we did not bring him back after tagging him. He was looking for a contract of about $14 million. The Cowboys kind of balked at that and was like, there's no way, and ended up signing a deal with the Texans, having a pretty good season with them for much less. I think it was $6 or $7 million. I can't remember how long that deal was, but he ended up having a good season with C.J. Stroud, similar to the season that he had with the Cowboys. Cowboys seeming to have made the right call, because you look at Dalton Schultz, Fergalicious, as I like to call him, okay, but Ferguson in his second year, being the second leading receiver on the Cowboys roster, and being a guy who can block a lot better than Dalton Schultz, and seeming to be ascending up there as one of the better tight ends in football, a position that you really and truly need a game changer. As you go through and you look at the really good teams out there, the teams that are deep in the playoffs and Super Bowls, they all have a great tight end, be it, Skittle Kittle, be it Kelsey, be it, I'm trying to remember Baltimore's, what's his name? Having a brain fart. But you can see, knowing that, Tom Brady always having like Gronk and things like that, the Eagles having Dallas Goedert, you need a great tight end. Now here's the question, because the Cowboys, one of the problems the Cowboys have had in recent years, now like I said, tight end was a position that we didn't lose anything by not re-signing Dalton Schultz. You could look at that and say that Ferguson, to me at least, with his 8 TDs and him being an integral part of the Cowboys offense, being more of a dynamic playmaker than Dalton Schultz, to me, they did good on that situation, which is where when you let a guy go or you pay a guy to come in, you want them to do better than what the person was there before. That was one that you could say, at worst, it was, even serve. I think it was better. One spot that definitely was not better was with the Cowboys saying, let's get rid of Zeke Elliott. Now, you got rid of the $16 million a year, be it though you basically took that money and you're dividing it out over 2 seasons. We are still going to be paying Zeke Elliott this year, because people don't understand when you say make a guy a post-June 1st cut, you're still paying the same amount of money. It's just over 2 years. So you can kind of lessen the pain, but it's one of those ones, pay me now or pay me later, you're going to pay me. Okay. And that's where we are with Michael Gallup. Regardless of what happens Michael Gallup is 13 point whatever million dollars. You can take that as one hit this year and be done with it. You can keep him on the roster and basically have the same issue the following year, or you can make him a post-June 1st cut and basically take half of it this year and half of it next year. But either way, you're going to pay 13 point whatever million dollars on his salary for this year. The question is do you want to pay him and have him on the roster for that this year and then stuff to deal with it next year, a la Russell Wilson? And that's where Denver's looking at it and saying, yeah, it'll cost us a whole lot of money to get rid of him this year, but we're going to have to pay that money this year, and then we got to do the same thing next year. So do we look at it and say, we're going to spend, I don't know what the contract number is, cap hit for this year off the top of my head, but do we want to pay $40 million this year as a dead money hit and be done with it, or do we want to pay him a salary of $40 million this year and then next year having that $40 million dead hit? In some regard, you're better off saying, let's go ahead and deal with it now, because you're just putting more good money after bad if you believe he's not going to work. A la Tony Pollard. I say all this to get around to Tony Pollard. Will Tony Pollard be with the Cowboys next year? So the Cowboys screwed the pooch because they said, we're going to get rid of Zeke. They got rid of Zeke, and their Rico was the solution. Rico was not as good as Zeke Elliott was. Zeke Elliott is not as good as Zeke Elliott was. You had a problem with Zeke Elliott the year before. You let him go, and instead of getting better at the position, you got worse. Because your solution was Tony Pollard double duty. Tony Pollard's best deal is being a part-time back. It's kind of like when we had Marion Barber, who was such a brutal runner that you could not run him every down. The best way was about 15 carries a day where he's running over people, and then you end up having a change of pace back. Cowboys screwed the pooch on that, paying $10.9 million. And if you remember, if you remember how quick Tony Pollard was to sign that franchise tag, I think he recognized that the market wasn't as strong for running backs as what people would have thought. You know, the Cowboys are thinking, oh man, if he hits the open market, he might get, 12, 13, $14 million. But unfortunately, the market dried up. You saw Saquon literally having to sign the 1-year deal and not wanting to get the tag. Josh Jacobs, of course, not wanting to get the tag. And now seeing guys like Derrick Henry out on the market. The Cowboys actually overpaid for Tony Pollard. If I were Tony Pollard, hey, I ain't mad at you for getting as much as you can, because your career is very short-lived. However, you got to go with the market dynamics. So now, Tony Pollard, the question you have to ask is, was Tony Pollard part of the Michael Gallup recovery program? Because he did have the broken leg. Did that preclude him from having a season as good as it could have been? Probably did have some effect on how good he could be. We've seen Terrence Steele not being as good as he was before the ACL. We've seen Michael Gallup not as good his first year back from the ACL. He played better this year, but still not to the level that you want to see him play. So, in the equation has to be, how is Tony Pollard's health going forward? Will he be a stronger player this year than he was last year? First question. Second question is, what is his role? Because if his role is going to be a full-time back, do you believe that he can be a full-time back and be better and pick up the slack? I don't think that you do. I don't think that you say he is an every down back. And this is where you need to get back to the situation where you have him as a change of pace back if you're bringing him back, and have a bruising back a la somebody like Derrick Henry. So now you're looking at it and saying, what am I paying for a part-time back versus what's out there in the draft? I don't think there's a lot of great running backs in the draft that are going to be first-round picks. I think there's a lot of good guys that you can get second and third round. So you look at that and say, we might be better off getting a guy in the draft or getting one of these free agents. Because probably looking at the $10.1 million that you paid Tony Pollard, you're not paying it back that much now. You're just not. You probably get Derrick Henry for $5, $6, $7 million. And if you're saying the difference of Tony Pollard or Derrick Henry, even if Derrick Henry's advanced age, I'm taking Derrick Henry because he's got a different set of skills. Would that mean I would not like to bring back Tony Pollard? Sure, I would love to if he's going to be a change of pace back, a gadget weapon. But the reality is his market value probably is in the $4 or $5 million range. It just is. Sadly, that's what it is. And you don't know if he has that set in his head where he looks at it and says, I made $10 million last year, I'm a $10 million guy this year. The money's just not there for running backs like it used to. And I dare say the way the season went for him, his market value is definitely down. And the Cowboys traditionally, when you look at DeMarco Murray, after having that 1,800-yard year and being on the last year of his contract, they ran him in the ground and said, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. You see what they did with Zeke Elliott. And quite frankly, you have to think of what Zeke Elliott's market was. Zeke Elliott went for, $3 million with New England? You're probably looking at Tony Pollard being in that kind of a range as well. If you can bring back Tony Pollard for $3 million and you can get Derrick Henry for 6 or 7, and you're only spending $10 million in that, I'm on board with that. I'd be okay with that because I think you would definitely be improving what you did last year for less money. And that's ultimately what the Cowboys are going to need to do. So we'll see where all that goes. We'll see if that's going to be the case. And this is where I've been trying. Life is crazy. I've always got so many different things I got to do and things, and I'm always ripping and running and everything else. I thought I was going to be on the road first thing this morning, but the garbage disposal at the house. This is the second time this has happened. And I don't know what's going on with Badger, but it's leaking from under, like inside of it, like the internal tank in there is leaking. This is the second one I've had happen in recent history, and I'm wondering if when COVID happened and factories were short people, or maybe even still now, that they are trying to rush to get the products out, and the quality control isn't there like it used to be to get these things squared away. Because that leaking in the middle of it, that ain't good. That ain't good, bro. You got the electric connections and everything else that are right there up underneath of it. And if it's leaking from inside of it, bro, that's that ain't good. So just dealing with that whole situation and having to change that up and getting some blanks made for Michael to cut with the X-Carve for some prints for a person in there and things, and getting on the road and just getting on the road. Oh, but check this out. Oh my goodness. We're always on the cutting edge, or I try to be on the cutting edge. We have in these boxes right here, we have a sublimation printer. You're probably like, what the hell is a sublimation printer? Sublimation printer is like this shirt right here, We Them Boys. My wife, of course, makes these shirts. But this is a vinyl cutout. So you have a sheet of vinyl that's one color. You can get different colors and all that for it. The machine takes that sheet and it basically has a real thin blade that cuts whatever design you have. And then you got to pull off all the pieces that are cut. Then it gets heated and pressed onto a shirt. It's very labor intensive to do it, and you are limited because it's hard to do a lot of different colors, because then you're talking about layer after layer after layer. If you were trying to do 3 or 4 colors, you're using like 4 sheets of this vinyl, and you've got to do layer on top of layer. This is a Sawgrass 1000, which is a printer that prints out the whole transfer in color. So if you want a picture of somebody or true graphics of something, you can do that. It'll print it out. You don't have to weed it, and then you can just basically put it on the shirt with the press and press that sucker on. But wait, there's more. There's the size of it. I got a bigger size of it, so you can actually do up to 14 by 17 inch transfers. You say, okay, why do you want that big? Well, some of the shirts we have, sometimes got some 3X and 4X. If you've got like the smaller units where it's only like 11 by 11, it looks tiny on the shirt. But then you can print out ones that are going to be bigger to fit the size of the shirt. So this is something new. I know my man Game Time Brian wants to get some stuff worked on here, but this is going to be taking us to a whole nother level. All right, good people. I've got about an hour and a half left to go driving. I appreciate spending the time with you guys. Don't pass the time. Peace.